You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
This is Analese.
This is Rob, and we are your nerd best friends.
Comic books made into movies is our topic today. Hellboy and the Crooked Man.
I love this story. I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
This is your Nerd Best Friends official call to action. Grab your devices, hit that subscribe button, and give us a rating. Share the episode with your fellow geeks. Let's grow our nerd community together. Every click helps us reach more of you out there. So what are you waiting for? Join the movement. This is episode 65. We're talking about comic books made into movies. I am so shocked at this one, Rob.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me saying, for the duration now, let's see, we're at over 30 years as friends.
Sure.
Right?
Really?
When
Yeah.
I was
Damn.
15.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And you
Yep.
were 14. So over 30 years as friends, what I've known about you is that you are not an adrenaline seeker. You don't
No.
like
I don't like the roller coasters.
roller coasters.
I don't
right?
want to go skydiving.
No, you don't have that thrill-seeking adrenaline pumping. And that includes not enjoying horror genre things, movies, books, films. The idea of being scared by something, I don't know, you tell me, is it too realistic for you? Your brain gets too
So let me see if I can clarify this whole thing, because it's not going to make sense, because it's my weird human brain, and human brains don't make sense. To me, horror is a spectrum.
Of course. Yes.
So to me, I love aspects of horror. Like, if you think about the games I play and the D&D campaigns we do and all of this stuff, if it has to do with monsters and mythology and especially like that kind of gothic classic horror stuff, I love that stuff. Right? I love H.P. Lovecraft. I love these crazy monsters and ideas of cosmic horror and being driven mad and those kinds of things all the time. And I don't love horror movies because I don't love the jump scares and stuff they do. But if it's something, especially something like this, where it's a work of fiction, it's something that I've read, and then I could go watch the movie. It's well, I know what's going to happen. So it's cool to me to see the adaptation of what that is, right? So I'll watch, The Color Out of Space or whatever, because that's an H.P. Lovecraft movie. Oh, that's going to be scary. The dude's going to go all mad and he's going to hear the noises and he's going to hear the colors and it's going to be crazy. I'll go watch that, knowing it's going to be scary, but knowing where it's from. I'm not going to get shocked with something, completely wild. The other thing about that is a lot of the stuff that I do like is all very fictional. What I don't like at all is things where it's people in modern times being terrorized by other people, or bad actors, or things that even though it's far outlandish, something that well, that could happen. I'm a guy, you know what I mean? But I'm not Hellboy. I'm not, Roman soldier. I'm not, you know what I mean? There's there has to be this large barrier of fiction where the point of view character is something fictional and outlandish. If the point of view character, and it's scary because that point of view character it's just like us, I'm out. I can't no, I don't want to know about psychos breaking into people's houses. That's not what I want. Right? A monster in the dungeon under the castle, I'm here for you all day. Right? So, you know what I mean? On that spectrum, I'm in the area where it's very fictional, right? Sure. And the monster can be scary, and the monster can be kind of horrifying, or body gross and that kind of stuff. And it can have jump scares, but it's it's different than teenagers getting cut off with knives by psychopaths. That's too much for me, or that's not enjoyable to me.
You're talking about, it's a big factor for you knowing the story. If you were going to go see a horror movie, that you are familiar with it, even if it takes a wonky turn and they change the story and it's something totally different and surprises you, you still know the origins of it. You're also talking more along the lines of maybe psychological horror, where but it's so completely, I mean, I don't know. You look at Lovecraft and talk about people going mad. People go mad. That happens in real life, but it's happening because of a very fictional monster, a very not possible situation versus horror where it is based off reality.
Yeah, like I don't want to see a dude like slice up a lady with a knife. Like that's upsetting. That's not fun.
Yeah, sure.
But then like a cool monster with big fangs and claws like slices a dude open. Well, that's fun because that's just pretend.
Well, okay, but where does it lie? Let me use an example like Stephen King's It, a fictional clown that lives in the sewers that doesn't actually exist. It's actually a spiritual monster more than it is anything else.
But it is modern times, right? The people are like us.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like it's not in like a magical world. It's not in.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean? Like the people are like us. So that would be closer to, that would be stretching me out of my window.
Right. Okay.
Right. Because it's like,
there's still reality in it, even though that monster just takes form of a clown. It's actually like a very Lovecraftian type.
The idea of it is this is scary because like you could be this kid. You're a kid walking around in America. This could be you. And it's like, no. What I want to be is a cool superhero or a fantasy, knight or a Hellboy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the point of view character. It's like, well, that's just fun. That's not real. I don't know. Like I said, like it's not going to make sense. It's just the way my brain is. Especially when we do our role playing games, when we do our board games and stuff like this. This is kind of a funny thing about me too, is when I'm imagining all of these situations, right? Like when it's in my head and it's like we talked about all the time when we used to play games until like 11 o'clock at night on weeknights. And then I'd have to like try to go to sleep. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get to sleep till after 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm visualizing all this stuff and I'm seeing it in my head. When I see it that way, it's always like in a comic book format or like an animated format. It's never, isn't that weird? But
it's
like
not
when
weird. It's the way your imagination
the way my imagination goes, like when I think about those events we have in our games, like when I think about Docs putting on the scorpion armor and like fighting against the poison and coming out like barely alive, but like standing up all heroically with this awesome like black scorpion tail thing, like it's a double page spread on a comic book page for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't see it as like an actual person in a costume kind of, I don't know if that makes sense.
You know, that makes sense to me because you're the DM in that situation and you're imagining it happening to someone. And from my feet, it's me, right? I am Docs and it's happening to me. So in my imagination, it's happening, right? Like what would that feel like? How much pain, like but also the struggle for me to get better at is always putting it's not me, it's me as Docs. It's me as that character. How is this character going to react to it? But it's still very real on this side of the game because that's me playing that character. But yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense to me, right? Like, and I think that's just the difference in how you and I consume media like this, right? And
true. I mean, that also is a contributing factor to the point that, like, I have read a comic book in bed to fall asleep every night for the last 30 years. Right?
Sure.
So,
Exactly.
I see everything as a comic book.
And for me, everything is, I know I talk all the time about Stephen King, but I've been reading him since I was 12. For me, everything fits in this real world format. So watching things in the horror genre that are real world format don't bother me as much. I will say I agree with you to an extent. I'm not a big fan of gore for gore's sake. Like, let's see how bloody and gross we can make this. That's a big
the slasher movie.
But I don't mind a slasher movie because for me, it's like being a kid in the 80s when I was finally allowed to, like, either I snuck and watched it at a friend's house or my parents finally just said they're going to bug us until we let them watch it. I loved watching Michael Myers movies and Freddy movies and Friday the 13th. I watched all of those as a young person, as a teenager. That was what was pop culture at the time, right? Scream came out. I was 18 when Scream came out. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. And that franchise continuing to go is exciting for me, even knowing that there's going to be some things that I like cringe at because of the slasher. But I don't know. I think at the time it was safe for me to watch as a kid because what I remember thinking, like, in order to not be scared is, Freddy's only going after adults. I'm just a kid. Freddy won't come after me. So now when I watch it, I'm like,
this is a movie and that blood is fake and that knife is plastic. It was like, oh no, I'm safe. I'm a kid. You're not going to be a kid forever. At least Freddy's going to get you.
Well, now when I watch it, it's like, oh, that's me now.
Freddy's going to get you.
I was also into stage makeup and learning how to make. I took a class my freshman year in high school where I got to learn how to make injuries and blood bags that would explode when you touched it a certain way. Like that side of it was also very intriguing to me. So it didn't bother me as much. But, you get into like the Paranormal Activity and the, what is it called? The Ring. And what's the one with the little puppet dude? And he plays a lot of games, which would be interesting.
Jigsaw.
Jigsaw, yeah.
What
Saw.
do they call those? Saw. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not into those films at all, and I know a lot of people are. Like The Purge is a really intriguing concept, but it's just gross to be gross.
Right.
Like The Purge is really, you want to talk about psychological horror, the idea that you could do anything you want for 24 hours and not go to jail for it is an intriguing thought, but then it's just
terrible.
It's just gross.
It's just like, what can we show that's like the worst aspects of humanity?
But what I will say, and my point of bringing all this up before we get into the things, is that more and more recently you are delving into things in this horror genre, and it's so cool. It makes me geekily excited because it's
good. I think it's just because we're talking more about our pop culture and our
maybe
fiction,
maybe.
But yeah, no, I'm not like all day long. Like I definitely, when I go to watch like something, that's a whole nother thing. It's like, I don't watch a lot of stuff, honestly. Like I don't sit and watch things because I'm usually doing something with my hands or my eyes or driving this teenager all over town or those kinds of things. So it's like, if I'm gonna watch a scary movie, it's like, do I have a reason to or an excuse to? Because I know I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to sit down and I'm gonna have to pay attention and I'm gonna be nervous and I'm gonna be excited and all that kind of stuff. It's not an easy, like,
you have to psych yourself up.
And kind of psych myself up or do it with somebody. Like for this Hellboy, I knew it wasn't gonna be scary because it's a dumb Hellboy movie, but like I would not. So like, what's the movie out right now in the theaters is like Nosferatu, right?
Yeah.
That's a vampire movie. That's, whatever. I know the history of like that story, and actually like the family wanted that story destroyed because it was unpublished by the author at the time. And like, I know about the Nosferatu story. It's a cool monster and whatever. Like I would see that movie, but like drop of the hat if somebody walked in here and was like, hey, you want to go see this Nosferatu movie this afternoon? I'd be like, oh no, I don't.
I think Nosferatu and rekindling some of that genre is very exciting. Some of those early horror novels, Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, Dracula novel, Nosferatu, like all of these are really great novels if you've never read them. I'm excited for things. I actually haven't seen Nosferatu either. So.
I have.
Oh, did you?
Let's get into it. Do we have anything we do any other first before we get into the thing? Oh,
it's time for Nerd Mail.
Nerd Mail.
Hey, do you have any nerd mail?
I don't have any nerd mail specifically, but I did want to advertise an opportunity for us to get some nerd mail, which is we are now on Bluesky. We are NBF Podcast on Bluesky. You can find us there. It's easy to find us. You'll see our big logo and you'll recognize our posts because you'll see our episode posts and our daily stuff. Yeah, if you're one of the millions and millions of people who are sick of Twitter and moved over to Bluesky, we're there now too. Go ahead and give us a follow.
And it's the only one that's not at Nerd Best Friends because the Nerd Best Friends was too long for Bluesky. There's a whole thing with that.
It's a whole thing. Oh, you're right. Shoot. Okay, we got to fix that.
No,
I'll work on it.
NBF Podcast. We're good.
All right.
I just think it's funny. Speaking of social medias, we hit over 100 followers on Instagram. We're pretty close to it on Threads. We're doing a really good job building our nerd community. So Bluesky, awesome. Join us. Have fun. Tell your friends.
Yeah, Bluesky, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Well, I'm going to say we have a Twitter account. We haven't been active on it, but I keep it open so that no one else can take it.
Like an automatic post sync thing. Okay. Sorry. X.
X as in no. Nerd mail on my end. We got some really great feedback on our episode with Ashley from Oakbridge, and some of the fans of Oakbridge listened and really appreciated the interview. And so thanks to Ashley, and great conversations on Threads. So find us on one of these. We're at Nerd Best Friends or Bluesky NBF Podcast.
Hot damn.
Oh, we're going to have some fun right now. Let's get to Talk Nerdy to Me. Talk Nerdy to Me today, we decided we're going to do some 90s trivia. So all you 90s kids, see how we
It's a warm-up for next episode.
Well, don't spoil it yet. But yes, it is. We were teens to adults in the 90s. So our experience in the 90s would be a little bit different if you were a child in the 90s. We were children of the 80s, born in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. All right.
Way back.
We're going to ask each other.
20th century.
Yeah, right? Way back when. Oh, I saw a really funny reel where this kid hands his ID to a bartender and the bartender looks in, it says 2004. And she's like, I'm sorry, you have to be 21 to buy alcohol. And then he looks at her and he goes, I was born in 2004. And then the realization on her face that we're in 2025.
That happens to me all the time. Like, I feel like, what year is it? It's 2014.
It's like 2002. What? It's still 2018. What are you talking about? All right,
I'm going to start this up. I have a music question for you.
You have a music question. Okay. Is it my trivia question?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go.
It is not multiple choice.
Okay.
In 1996, a rapper died, and this became a defining moment in 90s hip hop. What is the name of that rapper?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is Tupac and Biggie, so it's got to be one of those two. Because it should be two rappers died.
The one I was thinking of was Tupac. That is a point for you.
Yes. All right. I also have a music question for you. What girl group released the songs Say My Name, Bills, 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 and Jumpin' Jumpin' in the year 1999? Would you like a hint?
Yes.
One of the members is one of the biggest all-time selling artists of all time.
Oh, well, that would be Beyonce. And Beyonce before that was in, not Salt and Pepper, Destiny's Child.
Yeah, you got it. There you go. Destiny's Child.
That one almost hurt. All right. What was the highest... There's a movie question.
Okay.
What was the highest grossing movie of the 90s?
Ooh. That's a good one. 90s high-grossing movies. Avatar didn't come out in the 90s. It came out after, right? It's the Spider-Man. Could be Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. No. Because I know that was a high-grossing movie. And I only know that because of the show Entourage, where they play on that with the fictional character Vince, saying they want to beat Spider-Man, but that can't. Oh, it's got to be Titanic.
You got it. It is indeed Titanic.
Yes.
I was trying to remember, like, when I thought of it, I was like, what, did Jurassic Park beat Titanic? No, I think Titanic, like, held the record forever, like, for the next 20 years
until
or something. Until
recently.
Avengers or something.
I don't even think it was that, actually. I'm interested to know the answer to that. It was Avatar in 2022 that finally beat Titanic.
Oh, so the new Avatar.
Yeah, the new Avatar.
That's weird. I didn't think that movie was that
Endgame
popular.
is on that list as well.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
2.7 globally. Yeah, that's wild. Another James Cameron film. Oh, here's a good one. I'll match you with a movie one as well. Which Disney animated movie became the first in history and the only in history to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars? Disney animated film.
Beauty and the Beast.
Ah, you got it. Good job. Do you want to know why it's the only?
Why?
Because the year following, the Academy Awards added Best Animated Picture. So after that, all animated pictures are in its own category and do not get nominated for Best Picture. Wild, right? All right. One more for me. I have 2 for 2.
All right. I've got a TV one. I've got 2. I've got one that is difficult that I would never have gotten.
Okay.
And I've got one that I definitely would have gotten, but I'm not sure if you will. Do you want the extra? Do you want the one I think is super hard? Do you want the challenge one? Or do you think the one that I think is like probably reasonable?
I'll take the challenge.
What is the name of the high school from the show Saved by the Bell?
Bayside.
You got it right away. I would never have pulled that out.
I just remember they would do the morning announcements. This is Bayside High School, blah, blah, blah. What was it? Well, tell me the other one, just for bonus.
The other one was in The Simpsons, Who Shot Mr. Burns?
Oh, I actually don't know that one.
See, I was opposite. There was a whole thing.
Assistant?
No, it was actually Maggie Simpson.
Oh, I do remember that. They made a whole thing about it. They were making fun of the soap Dallas. Who shot JR. So they were parroting that. I do remember that. And
they
Maggie
did a whole thing. It was like a to be continued episode, like a season ending and then a season starting. It was on the cover of TV Guide. Oh my God, remember that?
Yes. And they used to have like call in if you think who you think did, call this number if you think this person did it, call this number if you think this person did it. And they'd show the results and then they charge you 99 cents for calling that name 100 number.
The 90s, man.
Way to get you. All right. 90s. I have one I think you're going to get, but I think you might convince yourself otherwise. So this is video game category. What was the best selling video game console of the 90s?
I can't decide if it was the Sega Genesis or the PlayStation 1. I'm going to go with PlayStation.
That's a good guess. Yeah, you got it.
All right.
I thought you were going to try to convince yourself that it was the Xbox. Because didn't the Xbox come out late 90s? Or was it early 2000s?
I question that. I don't remember. Was it 99? Was it 2002? Something. Yeah, it was around in that area. I think the Xbox came out.
I think it's early 2000s, like 2001 to be sure.
Yeah, I was definitely in college because that definitely stole a lot of my time when I should have been studying for courses.
Well, that was fun, Rob. Thank you for doing some 90s trivia. Maybe
I've got a bonus. We went 3 for 3. I've got a fun one for you.
Okay.
It won't count.
Fun one?
Just bonus because I've got this fun one here that I thought was a fun fact.
Okay.
What was the best-selling pet in the 90s?
Best-selling pet? You mean like a real animal? We're not talking about like those little Tamagotchis, I think is what they were called, right?
More than dogs, more than cats, more than hamsters or rats, the Tamagotchi was the best-selling pet in the world. Are you serious? In the 90s. Yes.
That's not even a pet. That's an annoying
more Tamagotchis were sold than animals adopted.
My other guess was going to be a Furbo. Does a Furbo count?
Furby, right?
Furby. Yes, I'm sorry. Furbo is the is the animal monitoring camera system. Yes, the Furby.
I remember it was super wild when people would take their Furby and they would cut off the outside, like the feathers and the fur and stuff. And so it would just be like this plastic ball with this weird owl, like eyes skeleton thing. And the eyes would be moving around and talking to you.
That's terrifying.
That's
terrifying.
Kind of hilarious.
The best thing that Furby did was make a Gizmo Furby. I did have the Gizmo Furby, but I never put batteries in it and had it. I didn't want to talk to it. I just thought it was cool.
Furbies are weird, dude.
Yeah, it's like My Little Buddy. Remember that?
But it didn't talk, remember? Like it didn't say words.
The Furby?
Yeah. No, it just like
teach it.
Cooed and made noises.
I think you could teach it to like say things.
Maybe I don't remember it right. We never had one. I just knew like people at people's houses, they would have one and you'd be like, hey Furby, how was your day today? And it'd be like,
you might be right. I might be remembering it wrong. Wild.
Who cares?
Tamagotchis, Furbies, whatever. Nerds, send in your deep thoughts, nerd questions, or talk nerdy to me subjects that you'd like for us to cover. Slide into our DMs or send those topics via email to podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Now back to our horror conversation and Hellboy.
Now we get to talk about Hellboy. Was this your first exposure to Hellboy, or have you like seen the movies or read Hellboy comics before?
I am pretty sure I long ago glanced through a Hellboy comic. I am pretty sure long ago I've seen bits of earlier movies, but this is the first time I've from front to back completely watched a film, from front to back completely read a comic.
Very cool. So there is a ton of Hellboy out there. Yeah. Mike Mignola's been writing this comic for decades. And it was one of the things, I used to do this thing, and I guess I kind of still do, where I'll like pick something for the year and just go all in on it. Very similar to what you did with Stephen King last year. Very similar to what I did with like the Dragonlance novels, where like the new ones were coming out. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to read them all again like this year, and it's going to be the year of Dragonlance. I think I started doing this, I want to say 2015 was the year I had this idea, and in 2015 it was Lovecraft. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to read every H.P. Lovecraft book. There was a great podcast that kind of did the same thing, like did analysis of stories. So I like listened to this podcaster. I was like, that was great. I feel like I know a lot about Lovecraft, or even if I don't know, like remember a ton, like it was a good experience. And I can say like, yeah, that's a Lovecraftian horror story, blah, blah, blah. Right. The next year, 2016, I did Conan. And so I read all the Robert E. Howard Conan stories. I read most of them actually in comic book form, because something that, I can't remember the company, not Dark Horse, maybe Dark Horse, maybe Marvel. Anyway, somebody went through decades ago and just took the Robert E. Howard stories and did like one-to-one comic book adaptations of them that are like gorgeous and really cool and kind of have that 70s, 80s vibe. So that year it was all Conan. And then I can't remember what happened. Something. I think Andrew started reading R.A. Salvatore books. I got distracted, and then there was a pandemic and whatever. But then in like 2022-ish or whatever, I was like, oh, I should do that again. What's the next thing I want to see? And I decided Mike Mignola's Hellboy. And so that year I read like all 10 volumes of Hellboy and loved it, and rewatched the movies that were out and stuff with Andrew. And we were like, you know what Hellboy is? And we watched that first movie. It's great. It's like that first Hellboy movie from whatever year that was with, whatever that guy's name is. You can tell I'm very prepared for this episode. It's the origin story, and it's real good.
Okay.
But kind of campy. But anyway, yeah, I love Hellboy. Mike Mignola's art style, especially in comic books at the time and even now, totally unique, totally awesome. Even before we get started, everyone needs to go to their Instagram or their social media of choice and follow Mike Mignola, because he posts his sketches, he posts his art, he posts his, like, whatever he's working on that week, he'll post. His first one back a couple weeks ago now that, like, I remember because it stuck out to me, it was like, first post of 2025. And it was this watercolor sketch of this harpy, and it was just the things of nightmares. It was amazing. Wow. But you could tell it's just him with a pen and a thing of watercolors on a piece of paper, and he snapped a picture of it. Like, it's very authentic, very cool. But anyway, I'm a huge Mike Mignola fan. I'm a huge Hellboy fan, and I'm very, very happy that we've opened the door for you, because I hope you liked it.
Well, are we talking about first the comic? We're talking about the comic book first?
Yes.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the comic book, because I think that's the essential piece of art and fiction.
Yeah, and I don't have the historical understanding of Mike Mignola's work, right? Mm-hmm. What I did like is you had us read Hellboy, The Crooked Man, and The Return of Effie
Kolb. So that's Kolb. That was put together for that episode, but yeah.
And so I appreciated that the two different stories were visually different, because it was different times, right,
and different artists, I believe,
and different artists. But also, I mean, when I read the Crooked Man vignette, it looked like a comic book out of the 1950s. And I really appreciated that it wasn't as, I mean, it was pretty saturated with basic colors, and it was a lot of dark because it is a pretty dark story. And it did a really good job using basic colors that would have only existed in the 50s. I don't know if this was intentional, but this is what it looked like to me, using only basic colors that would have been available in the 50s for comic books, and being able to make a visual difference between, you know, the witches, and the horror part of it was a little bit more black and white with a little bit of poppy yellows and reds and blues. And then, you know, when it's a little bit more daytime, it's a little bit lighter, using more basic colors. And then when you get to the second part of the story, which I know isn't the movie, it looks to me like maybe they had the window open to maybe make the second part of it into a movie, but
could be. I doubt they ever do, but comic book wise, they did.
When we talk about the film, I mean, it was straight to streaming. It did not come out in the theaters, and it did not make a lot of money because of that. So I doubt they'll make the other one, but that one became more modern colors, very good with the visual aging of the church turned into a home.
Oh, right.
And the land. And so I really appreciated that. And again, I know little to nothing about Mike Mignola and his art style, but I appreciated being put into a time space based on the visual art.
I agree that the art was phenomenal. And what's interesting about this art is this is Richard Corbin art for this story, not Mike Mignola. But he's aping Mike Mignola's style, right? Anytime Mike Mignola can't keep up with all of the Hellboy writing and art anymore these days. So he still does a ton of writing. Mike Mignola wrote this story. However, he'll farm the art out to different artists at different times, and that's been the case for the last probably 10 years. But they always do it in that Mike Mignola style, right? Hellboy isn't Hellboy unless he's kind of got like that long drawn, like sunken shoulders, and the colors, like you said, are just very saturated and like solid. There's not a ton of line work and shading that way. It's just color in your face, dark. Anyway, that style, I love it. I think the art in The Crooked Man is phenomenal, even though it is not a Mike Mignola story. Like you said, it suits the story. The way the story is a moment in time. I couldn't agree more. I think the art is outstanding.
In a very kitschy way, it reminds me of Creepshow. And Creepshow is kitschy because when the horror stuff in that movie happens, they have bright colors and really cheesy soundtrack in the background. But you know, this is the horror part of the comic book. In this case, when you have flashbacks, it even shows you a color difference. When is it Jeff? Who's the main guy again?
Yeah, you know what? I should have the book in front of me.
Tom. When Tom is retelling the story of his youth and how he got hooked in with Effie Kolb, and how he got interacted with the Crooked Man. Those horror color schemes are there, and it's even further back in time than the 1950s. So it just made it really easy to read and really easy to follow the story, where it could have been very convoluted. What time was what, and where are you, and when are you? It was very, very distinct and clear thanks to the art.
I think remembering right when they do his flashbacks to World War II, it like becomes this sepia tone.
Yes,
that we would be used to seeing pictures from that time.
Correct. Yeah, it's really smart. I enjoyed the comic book a lot, and I think I even texted you in the middle of it, going, "Oh my gosh, you're reading this? This is scary. This is horror." And you were like, "Oh my god, I love it!" And then I was surprised as I was reading. I'm like, "Oh, this is creepy. This is like some of the art of the witches making." I really liked, we want to talk about horror genre. I really liked this melding of the idea of zombies and witches, because they make it very clear that they're not zombies, but they're definitely from the grave, right? Like it's really interesting.
Like they go into this kind of trance, right? When they start doing their witch thing and they're all touched by the devil and touched by the Crooked Man, they just kind of go mindless and violent. Right. But then, there's like an undead part. They start ripping graves up out of the ground. Oh my gosh, one of the coolest sequences of the world. You're just like looking at the headstones in the church, and they're like, that guy, and it's a nice thing, like, rest in peace, beloved, whatever. They're like, sinner, and the grave explodes out of the ground, and the person starts crawling out. Like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. And that's something that we can, like, hopefully I can encourage us to do more things with Hellboy. The thing that drew me to it, and the thing I love so much about Hellboy, is all of the stories are very well researched folklore, not just from America, but from all over the world. Mike Mignola, part of his craft and part of what makes him special is he does all of this research, and he goes to these places and talks to people to get these stories, these old folklore stories from everywhere, and then turns them into a Hellboy story, right? And if when you think about, like, there's a lot of Hellboy, one of the criticisms that Hellboy stories will get sometimes is like, okay, cool, I just read this Hellboy comic and it was about this awesome, like, Irish pagan folklore tale from back in the day or whatever. What did Hellboy do, right? Because a lot of times there's nothing for Hellboy to do. Like, he kind of, something crazy happens and Hellboy's there to comically say, oh crap. And then the story, like, that's all Hellboy does. And sometimes he'll shoot his big giant gun at things, but really a lot of times kind of like the end of Indiana Jones, the one with the
Indiana Jones
Ark.
and the Indiana Jonesing.
Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant. What's that movie called?
I know the Temple of Doom. I don't know the names of any other ones.
If not the Crystal Skull, I could name all of them. Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and the one with Sean Connery.
And the guy that does the thing. Indiana Jones and the New Generation. Indiana Jones, Starship Enterprise. Indiana Jones,
4 on Strange Tides. Yes, The Last Crusade. Thank you. You knew it the whole time. Oh my God. Yes!
Is it really?
Yes!
I was being a smart ass.
Right, because it's one of the most, like, famous movie titles in the world. You use it as a joke. Only Rob's stupid brain can't think of it. I don't even know what we were talking about. Oh, so, like, at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, like, the criticism was like, all that story would have happened without Indiana Jones. Like, Indiana Jones doesn't need to be here at all.
Right.
Like,
what is one of the funniest arguments about Indiana Jones?
Exactly. People will have the same thing about Hellboy. It's like Hellboy's just there so Mike Mignola can draw and tell this cool story about this folklore thing he researched.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I love about it, and you just get some super, super cool stories.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of the horror genre and have never read Hellboy, this is a great place to start. Even though you don't know Hellboy's origin, I don't know his origin story. How did he get to be what he is and how he is and all that? I don't remember. Don't tell me, because maybe I'll go back and read some origin stories. But it does the very good horror thing that it establishes these characters very quickly. It establishes the purpose and what's happening very easily. It surprises you with some pretty horrific scenes. Not horrific in the slasher sense, but horrific, and they're like, oh my God, this is scary. It establishes rules, right? They end up at a church that these demon beasts cannot cross, so you have these rules established, and it hits all the marks of a good horror genre story.
Perfect. So then, that being said, while we're talking about the art and the comic book art and those kinds of things, there were art choices and color choices and stuff made in the movie version as well. What did you think of that?
If we're looking at just the cinematography of it, I think they attempted to do the same thing that the comic did and really paint the picture via colors, depending on what part of the story it was, right? The horror scenes had a tone to it, a visual tone to it. The normal talking backstory scenes had a tone to to it. I say backstory, but also the flashback scenes had a tone to it.
Right.
I think they tried to do the same thing cinematography wise, and I think that was successful.
I agree. I think there was heavy use of filters to set those tones, just like a comic book would do. It's a comic book movie in that sense. There were certainly times when I looked at the movie and I was like, oh, they definitely spent their budget on other scenes. Like there's like some that's like, this definitely looks like a soundstage. Or even Hellboy himself, sometimes in scenes like, when you think about, when I look back at, say, like the 2004 movie, it was the 2004 Hellboy movie with Ron Perlman, Hellboy looks great. They put so much effort into the horns and into the giant arm and into the gun. Looks super cool, and it like looks really good. In this version, in the Crooked Man, there are scenes where Hellboy's sitting there talking, and you're kind of looking at him, and you're like, man, they just really slapped together that rubber arm, and he's definitely wearing it. Like, it just doesn't. There's not attention to detail as maybe a higher budget movie would be, which I think the 2004 one really was, right? That was like the Hellboy debut, Guillermo del Toro, and they put a bunch of money in it to make it like perfect. And this one's like, no, the story's the important part. Don't worry about the little stuff.
I don't know that I paid that much attention to Hellboy himself because you're just supposed to accept him as who he is, right?
Right.
And so it seemed to me, I mean, I might not have thought about it in the same way where the budget went, but I definitely thought they tried to make him look as humanistic as possible, which may have been a misstep because Hellboy's not humanistic. There are reasons why he looks the way he looks. And we toned that down for the sake of this film. And I think that's where I have my problem with this film. Do you remember when The Matrix came out and it was like top of the line, brand new CGI with the freezing as he like slow motion leaned back as the bullets were coming towards him and the stopping of the bullets and picking one up and touching it, like all of that CGI all of a sudden exploded everywhere. They even used it in the season finale of Buffy that year when they went up against Adam, right? Everyone was using the CGI once it became available and made. And I see a lot of the horror elements in the movie to be exactly that. I saw remnants of things they did in Stranger Things. I saw remnants of things they did in other horror movies, little CGI tips and tricks that for me cheapened the horror part of the comic book. Because the comic book only does it in bits, right? As I don't know if this is your explanation, Solo, or just how you know to describe comic books. When you're looking at a frame, you're looking at a snapshot of the most volatile moment in that scene, right? So the rest is filled in by our imagination. And I think our imagination does better than what they did with the CGI and effects, because it started to feel kitschy to me. It started to feel, I'm going to throw in every CGI tool that is available to us now. And to me, that made it less scary, where it could have been really, really scary.
Interesting. I didn't feel like it was full of CGI to the point where it was distracting. Like, I can't think of things that really looked bad or impractical.
It was not bad. It was not bad CGI. That's not what I mean by the analogy to Matrix. You definitely had some bad ones.
Oh, okay. You're talking about just like the tools that are used are the same tools. There's nothing new here, and they're cramming too much in.
And they're cramming way too much. And I think,
Gotcha.
I might be jumping the gun here, but you mentioned to me when I asked you what you thought about the movie is that if you hadn't read the comic, you might have been lost in it. And I think that happens because it's, look at this scary moment that we can make happen because it happens in the comic book, and this is how we're going to make it happen visually. To me, it cheapened it. If you think when they find, okay, I guess we should always say spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Right? I'm going to, like, my favorite part of this story is the end, and I'm going to ruin it for you. So stop the podcast and go read this book. It's really good.
So I'm like thinking of the moment where they found Cora's carcass, basically, and then the like raccoon comes in and like brings her back up, right?
Because like, she's a witch and she leaves her skin and turns it into, it's so cool. But yeah,
that was better in the comic than what I saw in the movie.
Too. Right? I thought the movie part was going to be horrifying and really scary because in the comic book, like when I read that comic book, it happens pretty early. And I'm like, this is a good one. I'm in for it now.
Yeah. And same thing when Cora dies officially, when she's floating up in the air and that big old snake comes on. Again, I saw Stranger Things in that moment, right? They used some of those same angles and shots and movement that to me cheapened what I saw in the book. But I will agree with you towards the end, some of that CGI stuff was way. I say CGI, it may not have been CGI. It could have been a stunt double up on a harness. Sure. Who knows? But I think where the movie messed up was spending too much on that and not really telling us the story as efficiently as the comic book does.
Gotcha. The other thing I think I would say to back up your case was the sound work, right? Like watching
Oh,
it the
gosh,
first
yeah.
time, I could be like, oh, how fun. They did that story. But like Analese, looking back, like if I were to watch it again, I'd be like, hey, let's play a drinking game. Every time you hear like that bone cracking sound effect, take a drink, you'll be wiped out by the end of this movie.
Right.
It was way overused and it was,
Yes.
things like that. So I can see that for sure.
And the backing soundtrack was a little wonky too. It seems to not fit at times. It's really strange.
Interesting. That didn't pop out to me, but maybe on a second viewing. The characters and the story and these folks. So we've got Tom Farrell, and we've got Cora Fisher. And Cora Fisher was this kid he met, or this other kid that he met when he was young. And she was going to be a witch because she met the ladies out in the woods and they told her spells. And so, he was like, oh, a pretty girl is talking to me, basically. So I want to be a witch too. So he did the thing with the witch potion. That was another thing that I really didn't like is like in the middle of the opening of the movie, there's just like this exposition text, like this witch shows up and goes, so you want to know about being a witch, huh? I'm like,
yeah, it was kind of weird.
You could have done that in a different way.
Yes.
But anyway, so he does a thing and he gets the lucky bone, right? So he's doing these horrible rituals with this black cat and like whatever bone you're holding when the crooked man shows up, that's your lucky bone. And so he's got this bone and it's got powers, right? He flees and he tries not to use it, but he keeps it with him. And even when he tries to get rid of it, it somehow finds its way back to him and it sees him through the war and all this kind of stuff. And then he returns home. Sure enough, like the witches and the evil of the Appalachian Mountains and stuff have continued through. And then you've got the witches, you've got the crooked man who's like spooky and very much like, the stories you hear from the Salem witch trials, right? Like I was in the woods and a man came up to me and I signed his book and now I'm a witch. And like all those kinds of stories kind of intertwine with this character who was like, what was it? He sold weapons to both sides of the Civil War and got rich, and then they hung him, right? In the backstory.
That sounds very familiar.
That's why he's got all the copper pennies, because then he was like collecting money from all the souls of the people who died in the war and stuff. Like, it's really cool stuff.
I love this. I'll use the word mythology of the Crooked Man, and makes me want to read more literature about him in the myth of he's a classic boogeyman. Classic boogeyman that maybe Appalachian parents told their kids, if you do wrong, you'll end up like the Crooked Man. Like, it's so intriguing, this story of the Crooked Man.
Yeah, and even in the South, like that Crooked Man character is there. There's another comic book that we will read on this podcast someday called The Sixth Gun, and it happens more in the South. And it's like they go down the river, and at the fork in the river, if you give the Crooked Man rum and gunpowder, he'll tell you which way to go at the crossing and stuff like that.
It's like a chupacabra, right? It's like
absolutely. It's it has different flavors and does different things depending on the region, but it's overarching.
It's like chamucos. On our notes, you have what's her butt. Who do you mean, what's her butt?
The blonde witch, the
Effie Kolb, the main one.
Effie Kolb, thank you. Yes, I couldn't remember the name when I was the thing.
And then don't forget, I think the Reverend character.
I love the Reverend.
Phenomenal. Yeah, he's a bad.
He's great in the movie and the book. I think.
Yeah.
I think the guy in the movie does an excellent job of portraying him, especially in those like comedic moments and the horrible moments. When we think about classic tropes, like you were talking about with the horror tropes, like what a classic like fantasy trope as well, where it's like you use the curse,
the cleric
bow, you use the cursed bow. The cleric uses the cursed item to create the holy Avenger weapon that will slay the devil, and it's like, but it's a shovel, and that's
shovel. How amazing.
Classic Hellboy funny, like the holy avenger that will decapitate the devil. It's a shovel from the graveyard in the church. Like,
being
it's
used
so good.
on consecrated grounds means it's I love it. I also love the way they portray both in the comic and the movie. Does a really good job of portraying his being tempted by the Crooked Man, tempted back into youth and sight, and him fighting against. He's a religious man. He's fighting against the devil for his own soul, and I think that's portrayed very well. That was a good transfer from the comic to the movie. Actually, I think it's also it's a little bit more successful in the movie because it didn't feel like real consequences there in the comic. I think they did a better job visually in the movie of this is a real consequence that this guy's got to make a decision on.
Right, because he was there. He could have. I think both in the movie and the book, like, it gives you that sense of urgency and like this is a dangerous situation and coffins are flying through the stained glass windows and stuff. But in the movie, like him being there and all this stuff happening around him, and basically Hellboy's there just tanking, shooting all these undead and stuff while he's having this crisis of conscience right behind him and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's great in both genres. I think love that character. And then,
you know what? I think you were talking about a different character. I was talking about Effie Kolb is the witch that comes back on the horse.
Right.
But Hellboy does have, in this movie, I thought was interesting, he has a sidekick with him.
Right. So
that's not in the comic. It is in the second book, but it's organic. It's not someone he comes with.
Right. That was an interesting choice that they made, was to have someone from the BPRD be there with him as kind of a different point of view character for us. I would have been fine with Hellboy being the point of view character, but also having like a regular human person with some knowledge of the occult be there. And there was also an added story, like maybe a movie needs a little bit more in the plot, but her descent into becoming a witch that kind of mirrored the descent of Cora Fisher becoming a witch. I thought that was cool and valuable. I think that actress's clavicles were distracting to me the whole time. I'm sure she's just lovely and wonderful, but my gosh. Her clavicles are they stick out past her chin.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't say that, but it was distracting to me. I couldn't not look at her and be like, who has what? How?
But my problem is, so they make her this agent. It's Bobby Joe, but Bobby Joe is the teenager that Hellboy meets in the second part of the comic book. And she grew up in this town, and she knows Tom and knows the background and has that like mythological understanding. So to me, it didn't make sense to introduce her here as someone Hellboy came with, because then what are you doing for the second part of the movie if you made a part 2 to this? I thought that was a weird choice.
I can make an excuse for that, but again, it is probably a weird choice. So the Hellboy mythos is that he's part of an organization called the BPRD. So when you look at Hellboy comics, there's different titles, there's different comic lines for Hellboy, right? Like if you wanted to read Thor, you could read the Avengers, right? You could read Hellboy, or you could read the Adventures of the BPRD, which is the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Detective something, whatever. Yeah. And so that organization, that group of paranormal investigators and different creatures and stuff that come along into the group that Hellboy discovers and stuff, is part of the other movies, which again,
it doesn't explain, there's no continuity there. So
as a fan, it makes sense to me. Like, I saw this person, it's like, oh, that's a person from the BPRD. This fits in perfectly with the mythos. But again, if you don't have the background for this story, this movie's going to be confusing. This movie's not going to be going to catch you and make it one of your favorites. Which honestly, I hope that it made just enough money to like be successful, quotes, because it was for fans. And I wish more art was for fans and not, watered down to a mainstream audience sometimes.
It does make this unique, but I will say, from what I found in my research, it cost about $20 million to make, and they only made $2 million.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. And some of that was that direct to streaming, direct to video on demand. I don't know why they chose to do that, but that does hamper the ability for, I don't know, maybe they would have made less if they had distributed it to wide release in the theaters and have to make 35 millimeter copies for all, or I don't even think they use 35 millimeter anymore, but I'm sure the licensing costs more to make it a wide stream release instead of just straight to demand. I don't know how that works, but
I was also surprised that David Harbour wasn't Hellboy. Like, when I saw,
he'd be a perfect Hellboy.
Well, he was Hellboy in the last one.
Okay, he'd be perfect.
So there are 4 Hellboy movies. There were 2 Ron Perlman ones, and those were in the early 2000s. And that kind of
that must have been the one that I saw bits and pieces of.
And then in 2019, it was like, let's relaunch it and make it less superhero movie, more horror movie. Yeah. And it was with David Harbour as Hellboy, and I love that movie. And that one we could also do at some point. That one goes from Hellboy in Mexico, would be the comic to read, and then the movie, which is fantastic. It's got a dragon. He turns into a full... Wow. It's awesome. So all this time, when I was getting ready to watch this movie and stuff, I thought it was David Harbour, and this was just the next one of that, and it wasn't. And that, I don't know I guess I could research like what happened there, like whatever, but I don't know, it just didn't have the same gravitas that
Yeah.
seeing that familiar person in kind of one of these tropey horror, modern horrors would be, like the first one was.
But sometimes it's just the timing too.
Could be.
If it came out at a time when the horror genre wasn't, I don't know, wasn't as popular as it can be, it could get lost. And also, I think I wouldn't have known Hellboy is horror-ish, even though it makes sense. His name is Hellboy. That means it has to do with hellish things, and that can tend to lead to horror. But I would have never known that Hellboy dipped into horror like this. I would have never known. And maybe that's because I'm not a real horror fan. I don't know.
Well, it's because it's not a mainstream Marvel, DC, whatever. Like, it just doesn't have the engine behind it, right? So
I think the
Hellboy,
problem that it's a comic book is the problem, right? It's not a series of books that are horror books. It's not H.P. Lovecraft books. It's a comic book. So when someone like me sees, oh, it's Hellboy from the comics, I'm thinking comic book like DC and Marvel, but it's not like that at all.
which is how they played the first two movies. The first two movies, so the comic book is a horror comic book. It always has been with these well-researched things. The comic book is a horror book.
Yeah.
The first two movies that came out were superhero movies. And so I'm like, they're fine, but it's cool to see Hellboy. The second two movies are the comic book. They're horror movies. Yeah, interesting where it'll all end up, but the best you can do is Mike Mignola Hellboy. Like, I think Hellboy Volume 1 is great. I think Hellboy Volume 2 is even better. I think Hellboy Volume 3 is even better than that. And then there's different stories that you can find that are really good. He does the same kind of thing as like Atomic Robo, where whatever story he's telling, it just jumps in time. Like, it's not a linear thing. So like this one, they just put on the first page, 1959 or whatever, and here's the story we're taking, because Hellboy was born in World War II, and he's not human, so he can live for however long. We're just going to grab a piece of time. We're going to tell you on the establishing shot, hey, it's 1965. Boom, we're telling this story, which I think is really cool. So we've been talking a long time about Hellboy. Would just favorite moment of the story. I know mine. What is yours?
I think when we get to the high point and it's the big battle and hits the fan, and I think the comic book and the film were both successful in creating intensity, and use the word urgency, but definitely we're in it right now and it could go either way. And there's a moment in the comic book where it's that, and then there's definitely a moment in the film where it's like, oh, these guys could actually lose this, and this is the purpose of the story is their loss. So I thought that was done really well, and it was the most engaging part of the film.
So my favorite part is kind of two parts, and again, spoilers, like that moment where Effie Kolb, like you fill in these pieces of the backstory of Tom Farrell left. Effie Kolb was still looking for him. She turned his father into a horse with a magic bridle, like a magic item bridle, turned him into a horse. And she's like, and I've been riding him hard for the last 20 years or whatever, like no rest. And in the comic book, this horse is just skin and bones and hanging head, sad. And so they take the bridle off, it transforms back into his father. His father dies, and that's like the motivating factor. That's why they go to the church, is because he's like, I gotta bury my dad. And the last scene of that book is a picture of the horse again, and he painted on the side of the horse, "Beware, I am a witch."
Yes.
Because he got her back. He got Effie Kolb. He put the bridle on her. She turned to the horse, and then he just painted, like, because it's the 1950s South in the middle of nowhere, and she just went, "Beware, I am a witch." And that scene is like, that is so good. That makes everything worth the read right there. And I was like, and in the movie, you're like, wait a minute. I mean, they're going to show the horse, right? And sure enough, like at the very end, they're in a helicopter leaving the scene, and you see it on the hill. I am a witch. And you can't make a horse look like that horse in the comic, right? Like, no. The comic it looks like a regular horse in the movie because PETA, but like the horse in the comic book is like, that thing is miserable and barely alive. Yeah. So
and dire consequences for the fact that he doesn't kill Effie Kolb.
Right. So, final impressions. Hellboy the Crooked Man, comic and movie. What do you think, Analese? Skip it, borrow it, rush right out in a buying frenzy?
I would borrow the comic, and if you like the art, go buy it and support the artist. And if you like the story, watch the film, but do it in that order. I do not recommend, unless you are an expert in Hellboy, I do not recommend watching the movie first and then deciding if you want to read the comic. I think you will be thoroughly confused if you try to watch the film and be like, why did the nerds tell me to do this?
I would completely agree with you. I did borrow this book specifically because I knew, like, I want to read all Hellboy, everything of it. So I'm not going to buy $15, $30 books to do it, right? So I'm borrowing all of this. I'm usually reading it digitally. Like, every library is going to have it. Your digital libraries have it and stuff. Yeah. So yes, agree. But also, if there was a really nice edition of The Crooked Man especially, I would own that for sure. But the caveat I would give to your description would be the expert part. I don't think you need to be an expert in Hellboy to watch this, as long as, like you said, you read the comic first. I mean, you can share more about your experience, but I think if this is the first Hellboy comic you read, it's still a good comic.
Oh yeah, we're making the same point. I just mean unless you already know about Hellboy, don't watch the movie first. Someone who already knows a bit about it can watch this and have a good idea of what's going on. Anyone else who doesn't know a lot about Hellboy will, or unless maybe also you are an expert about the myth of the Crooked Man, maybe it'll make sense to you.
That could be too. You might live in a place where the Crooked Man is like the bugaboo story. Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, can't recommend enough. I think everybody should love Hellboy, and Mike Mignola, I think that it's wonderful. And if it's something that you have not uncovered in your nerdy life, definitely jump in. And depending on which is a lower barrier for you as the listener watching a movie or reading a comic, I think as far as like, if you want to get that intro, that origin story, you could read Hellboy Volume 1, or you could go back and watch that 2004 movie. It's good.
Good point.
And it has, and they're the same story, right? It's the origin of Hellboy. Like, it starts with them, World War II, and there's always those kind of like stories of like Nazis were into the occult and Hitler was like sending out these weird, very Indiana Jonesy or whatever. So it's one of those stories where it's like Nazis and Rasputin, and they open a portal to hell, and this little baby comes out, and then they're rescued by the American scientists, all this stuff. Like, it's the same story. So whatever's easiest for you, like, oh, go rent this 2004 movie or go borrow this book, you'll get everything you need as far as who's Hellboy and how does this work.
Support your local public library. Get a Hoopla account.
Always.
Borrow it. That's a low risk, high reward.
Absolutely.
Hey, Rob, it's that time again.
I love this time.
What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
So I was looking around, and we've been recording a lot. I feel like I've talked to you every week, if not more. So it's like, what have I done since the last time we talked? And so I look over to my right, because my computer table, like half of it is for podcasting and computer work, and then the other half of it is my painting station. And I'm looking over to the right at my painting station, and there's like 40-ish miniatures sitting here that I spent all yesterday just putting basing texture on. So I buy it in bulk. I don't use like the little Games Workshop pots that are like $9 a piece for a milliliter. I get like big tubs of it from other sources. But yeah, basing, like texture putty, basically what it is. It's paint with a bunch of like gritty sand mixed in. And so they'll have, different grits or different textures, right? So like I use fine texture, but there's medium and there's coarse, depending on if you want it to look really rocky or medium rocky, or, I find like the fine one looks more at scale for the little tiny miniatures that I'm doing. But yeah, and there's different ways to do it. So like I put mine on, I just have like the mud color, brown earth, and I put it on everything, all my models, before I prime them, so that I can then paint this putty whatever color I want for the model. Another way to do it, another way a lot of people do it, is they make different colors of this, right? So this one looks like mud, but you can get another one that looks like orange Mars texture. You can get another one that looks like snow. You can get a gray one that looks like whatever. You can get a yellow one that looks like beach sand or desert sand. I just paint mine after the fact. But
is this
sitting here slapping gross, gritty stuff on my bases.
Is that the same kind of stuff that, people also put like little tufts of like grass and texture? Do you use that, or do you use a different glue for those things?
So I will put those things on top of this after the painting
Okay.
is done. So that's usually my last
After.
step.
Yeah, okay.
Is I'll glue little tufts down or little flowers. One thing that I started doing, I caught on some internet video was I went into the cabinet and I got a couple different kinds of tea from the cabinet and I cut open the tea bags and dumped them in a little plastic tub and shook them up and mixed them. So there's all these kind of like different colors of like flakes and sticks and stuff.
Okay.
And so I'll glue that down on like bases that I want it to look like they're in the forest. It kind of looks like forest litter on top
like
of
mulch, kind of.
Kinda, yeah. So sometimes,
Okay.
like I mixed a hibiscus one in there, so it's got some like little kind of pinkish red flakes in it, and it's got like little sticks, and I don't know, it works pretty well.
And then it smells wonderful when you play. I'm just kidding.
It does, and my wife is allergic to hibiscus, so literally on that package of basic, I put like a skull and crossbones, wrote hibiscus on it, so Maria doesn't accidentally be like, "Hey, I want to put this on a bunch of miniatures and sit there for an hour breathing hibiscus and have to go to the hospital."
Do you put those things on before or after you varnish?
Well, you would put them on, if you were a responsible person, you would put them on before you varnish. That way they're kind of locked in, right? And everything matches with like the matte finish that you're looking for in your models. But I will admit to you, I have not been varnishing my stuff. I'm lazy. I just, every once in a while I'll have a event or I'll have a moment where I'll go to put the varnish on and either there's too much humidity in the air or it's not warm enough to evaporate it, or I spray too much on, not realizing, and it'll get cloudy and kind of like ruin the mini, basically. I'm like, oh my God. And so that happens sometimes. So I'm like, oh, it's got to be perfect to varnish and stuff. And like, as you know, my volume of miniature painting is pretty quick. Like, I paint a lot of minis and I'm like, I haven't painted varnished a mini probably all year. Like, I'm just,
wow.
I know.
We're early in the year, but yeah, you mean within the last
in a year.
Okay. All right.
If you're painting a metal model, you definitely got to varnish it because even that primer doesn't stick to the metal as good as it should. But like these plastic models, like how much do I really touch and rub on those models? Like not a lot. I'm making excuses. You should varnish them.
Until that one game that you play and it's going to be all over and you're going to start looking at your fingers going, what did I do?
Why is my finger blue? Oh no! My Space Marines!
I get it though. And you're right. I luckily, knock on wood, haven't ruined a mini by varnish, but I've seen videos where like, this is what it looks like when you put too much varnish. And it's like, I think I probably under put mine on, which I guess is okay. And I play
because a little is better than none.
Frequently. Yeah.
But that's what
and then some I couldn't tell when I did the zombie horde for Final Girl. I couldn't remember and I moved. I painted that in Santa Barbara before I moved. So I put them all in a box. And when I opened that box, I'm like, I remember texting like, how can I tell if it's varnished? And you're like, look at the base. And I'm like, I can't, I just revarnished them. And thankfully it still wasn't too much because good stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess I don't know exactly what the perfect setting is for spray varnish. Should it be warm and dry? Should it be in the shade? Should it be in the sun? I don't really know what the perfect varnishing situation is. All I know is every once in a while, I'll varnish my minis and I'm like, oh, wow, I really ruined that model. It's all dull and cloudy now.
I did most of my varnishing over the summer, which is really hot. And it's not totally dry here, but it's dry enough that it's...
Yeah.
The biggest risk I have is if I put a little bit too much on the base is that it gets stuck on the cardboard that I use outside and I have to like peel off bits of the cardboard because the varnish sticks to the base like glue. It's interesting. Also because it's really hot here in the summer.
How about that? Anyway, what's the nerdiest thing you did this weekend, Analese?
Gosh, there's so much nerdiness going on. And you're right. We're recording so frequently right now that it's hard to really judge. What I will say is we have confirmed that Final Girl Series 3 has made a port and I should get a notice any day now on when mine's going to arrive. And I'm super excited for that. I don't know if this is nerdy, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's officially happened. I ordered progressives this week. That's the new polite term to say that I need bifocals. Short story long, I've needed glasses since I was like 5 years old and I got to junior year of high school and I started using contacts. And then when I was 28, I got LASIK surgery. And they told me at 28, when you hit your 40s, close to your 50s, you're going to... And yeah, when I hit my 40s, I needed reading glasses and then I needed distance glasses. And now I need both all the time. So I'm back to having glasses all the time again. So that's fun and nerdy. We'll see how it goes. It's supposed to be an adjustment period. especially since I've gone almost 20 years without needing really glasses or anything. Now I have to like train my head to turn before my eyes.
That's what people say is the most difficult thing.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But I will say I spent some time this week. Really, the nerdiest thing I did this week was really think about my list of 25 for 2025. And I'm kind of copying what you and Joan did. And I got a little moleskin notebook and split up my goals into not themes, but just larger categories, right? I really appreciated your thoughts on that because it helped me really look at most of my goals are hobby goals, which is great, is really great. But some of my goals really on my professional side, on my job side, there are some things that I would like to get done that if I put them down and put them out in the world and try to get them done. So I kind of reorganized and I'm doing it differently. Like one of my goals is pretty simple. It's that I want to do something when I get home from work, just one thing a day instead of I've been so tired being a new principal. I'm coming out of that new principal fog. My habit right now is to come home and just veg because I'm so tired from the day. But then everything gets to the weekend and I've got this huge to-do list on the weekend and then my weekends are exhausting. So my goal is
do that one thing. Are you talking about like productive chore thing? Or are you talking about like a hobby enjoyment wellness kind of thing?
either anything.
Okay.
Right.
Oh.
I want, if I have a day that I get home before 6 o'clock, I want to do one thing. So one of the things was it was still nice outside. So I finally took down the Christmas lights. Instead of saying, well, I'll just wait till the weekend and do it and add it on, right? A load of laundry or unload the dishwasher or take out a game and play it. Like I'm doing one thing, whether it's enjoyment, hobby, or life chores to-do list.
Gotcha.
But I'm not coming home and saying I'll just do it on the weekend, which I'd get weekends where I'm doing 10 loads of laundry with all the dog blankets and all the things. Like, but if I just do one during the week or two during the week, that lessens that load. So I do a load
of laundry every night because otherwise that's my whole weekend.
The whole weekend,
laundry.
yeah.
And it'll stack up too. And I'll be like, then I have this like question of like, how much money would I pay to not have to do laundry for 2 days straight? And then I'll like go, okay, we're going to the laundromat because I can get it all done in
giant
like 3
loads
hours,
at
right?
once. Yeah.
But I don't like doing that. So yeah, that's one thing that's a habit I adopted years ago was just like one load of laundry, like come home,
just threw something in. Yeah.
Do it.
And so and that's what I'm looking at here, right? With this goal is to rebuild those habits that I had before I became a principal. And so I'm even allowing like, one of the nights last week, I had to supervise girls basketball. That's the thing I did after work, right? It's work related. So I didn't get home till like 9:30 that night. I'm not going to then go and do a chore. I'm done for the day. But that was the one thing. So it can be related to anything. And I'm using that little moleskin and I'm just writing the date,
Oh, so you're kind of journaling like what it is that thing you did every day. I like that.
So that now I'm celebrating these habits that I'm reforming, right? I'm going to work out. That's going to be the one thing. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to sit and watch this movie or this documentary that me and Sarah really want. Like it's all intentional. It's all making sure that I'm doing something other than just collapsing at the end of my day. And it's actually really helping bringing my energy back around too. So
when you have that work activity, right? You had to go to that basketball game because you know that that's your one thing. Did it help you be more present in that moment because you weren't thinking 100%. Of all the things you should be doing or could be doing if you weren't here?
I found that I didn't take my laptop to the basketball game, which I've done before, and just sit on my laptop in the back of the bleachers. I wasn't on my phone very much. I actually sat and watched and engaged in the basketball game. Yeah, it has helped in a lot of ways with my energy. It's helped with my intentionality on spending time with my partner and our pets and stuff. And it's helping me rethink how I organize the weeks and my workflow so that it's not all, oh my gosh, it's Thursday and I have all these things to do that I didn't do all week. And then
I really like that. Good for you. Yeah. That shows a lot of reflection and wisdom to find that niche of like making yourself using this 25 or 25 as a springboard for happiness, not reductive. Yes. I'm bad. I have to change my life kind of thing.
And what I appreciated with back in that episode, what I appreciated with how you described it is like the reality is I may not be able to do one thing every day, but if it's a thing, right? I'm not saying I need to work out every day. I'm not saying I need to do blank every day. It's, one of the days I was pretty dang tired, but what I tend to do with my dress shirts is I'll take them off when I come home and I'll just hang them over the side of a chair. So one of the days is like, I'm going to pick up my shoes and put them back on the shelf and I'm going to hang my shirts back up. And like, that was the thing. It took 5 minutes and then I could relax, but it's a thing so that I'm not doing it all on Saturday and Sunday. So it's simplified my thoughts into how I spend my days.
Cool. And I like the
Yeah.
idea of journaling it because at the end of the year, you're going to have pages and pages of like the productivity and like positive things you did for yourself.
Right. And also the days where I can write like just too tired. The thing I did for myself was listen to an audiobook for 10 minutes before I had dinner, before I went to bed. Like it's a thing that I'm doing instead of just, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to do anything. Yeah.
We'll count those things. Maybe you can do it so it's like you don't have more than 5 of those days, or you don't have more than 25 of those days.
Right. No more than 5
Just to
a
keep
month
with the
or something like that.
gamification of it.
Right on.
The year is 1995.
What?
No, just kidding. It is 2025. 1995 was 30 years ago, but from blockbuster movie releases and groundbreaking video games to fandom trends and the big stories everyone was talking about, we are diving deep into the moments that defined the year. Join us for a nostalgic look at what we were nerdy about 30 years ago in 1995.
One of my favorite episodes that is now recurring for us, the 30s. I love it.
Ooh, I've already started my lists and it's pretty fun. I would say the most fun I had was I tackled music first. And so I was like looking at music that came with it. And of course, phone immediately came on like, I'm making a playlist, all these bangers. So I ended up with like a 1995 playlist that's got like 13 songs on it of awesome jams I'm going to be driving around to this year.
Do you know what my new favorite thing is? Like on Reels or TikTok? Is watching first reactions to people who are maybe young millennials or Gen Z, the first time they're hearing some of these songs from like the 80s and 90s. You should check it out. It's pretty phenomenal to see their reactions to some of these going, oh, I thought this was like just a song that my grandparents listened to or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're like, oh, I hear this at the grocery store.
But then they're actually listening to it and like, oh, because especially hip hop songs aren't written with hooks anymore like they used to be. So some of those hooks from 30 years ago are still so good. When Gen Z hears them for the first time, it's like their ears are getting cleansed to what an actual songwriting song sound like. It's pretty cool. You should check it out.
Well, there's another version of that too that I see often where it's like they'll do that for musicians, right? So you'll see like a young person is sitting behind a drum set and they play a Nirvana song for them and they're like, oh, okay, and they'll like try to play along and like gets the feel like, oh, that's interesting. And or you'll see like this young girl with like a guitar and it's like, okay, we're gonna listen to have you ever heard the song blah 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 by Metallica? And it's like, no. And then they'll listen to it and they're like, oh, there's a bridge. And they'll like try to figure out the chords to play. Like, it's pretty funny.
It's good stuff.
Reminder on our call to action, hit that subscribe or follow button on your device and spread the word with those sweet 5-star ratings. Connect with us on social media at NerdBestFriends or send us an email at podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Let's grow our nerdy family and keep the geeky fun going strong.
I am so thankful, Rob, that you introduced me and forced me to read Hellboy because I'm such a horror fan that it's exciting to know that there's more horror to be had out there.
That makes me so happy because that is what I love most about this show is turning people on to really, really cool stuff that I love. And I hope that this is not the last time we talk about Hellboy.
We'll see you next time, nerds.
Thanks for listening. Like if